Hey y'all, my apologies for the delay. I had to go pick up my vehicle from the car shop, get some U joints put on, get the brakes replaced, get some new tires, and get ready to rock and roll and spend the next 2 months on the road. So took a little longer than I expected. So my apologies. Now this evening, what I'd like to talk with y'all about is that. Well, let me back up a little bit if that's all right. When I was a brand new lieutenant in the Army, a young, freshly commissioned officer, and I went to infantry officer basic course, where I was trained, of course, to lead infantry soldiers. Um, and I I was handed this folio. It was about, I don't know, a couple of hundred pages, and each page it wasn't very well organized, and it was kind of funny because it wasn't a book, like one of these books. It was just a bunch of pages stapled together, but it had some of the most profound information in it that I've read outside of the Bible and the great thinkers. But anyway, it was called "Why We Fight," and it was quotes from going all the way back to the ancient Greeks and coming up to the 1980s. Excuse me. And basically it explained why we fight, and it's a valid question, because why would good, decent, peace-loving people engage in violence or engage in fighting on other terms? As we've discussed before, war, as it's understood in the national defense professions, is basically the idea is that it's the implementation by any entity of any combination of the elements of power to compel another entity, any other entity, to comply. In other words, it's using your capabilities to force someone else to do what you want them to do, whether that someone else is an individual, whether it's a government, whether it's a nation, whether it's a corporation, whether it's whoever it is, a people group, whatever it is. But anyway, that is the definition of war. And the elements of power are diplomacy or politics, depending on whether it's external to the country or whether it's domestic or foreign. Um, so there's diplomacy, information. In other words, this is important, not just that you provide information, but rather that you control information. And you don't simply control the flow of information, as in what is available, what gets out, and all that sort of thing, but you actually affect intentionally for the purpose of causing the effect that you want on the battlefield. You manage the flow and the type, and when the information becomes available, to whom it becomes available, in what form, the validity of it. Now, so information operations are far more than simply saying what you think, or refusing to say what you think. There's a lot more that goes into it, a lot of ways to lie to people even while you're telling them factual information. But so there's diplomacy or politics, information. Then there's military or physical force. In other words, you go up and you say, I'm gonna chop your head off if you don't do what I tell you to do, or maybe just punch you in the mouth. Some people are more easily convinced than I am. Punching me in the mouth never convinced me of anything. I doubt that cutting my head off would. And then, of course, there's economics. So you've got diplomacy or politics, information, military or physical force, and economics. Those are all the elements of power. In other words, if you can control someone's ability to earn money, to keep money, to spend money, to use money, to have the things that they want, to have the things that they need, then you can control them. Thanks, Paul. That's very gracious of you, sir. I'm glad to see you here. So that's economic power. And then, of course, there's military power, which we've discussed. Someone walks up and says, I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to destroy your home. I'm going to kill your children if you don't do what I tell you to do. That's military or physical force, of course. Information we've already discussed. And then diplomatic or political power. We really need to get into that one. Um, Political power really rests upon your capability to convince people to do what you want them to do, to convince them to do it. It has a lot to do with trustworthiness, with credibility, with knowledge, with compassion, or at least perceived, that these things are perceived to be in your person. And I'd like to tell you that currently in the United States government, much of what is perceived is simply not true because they conduct information operations to convince you that what they need you to believe so that you will follow their political power is actually true. I'm sure that's not surprising to anyone. So, back to why we fight. Um, this information that we were given when I was a young lieutenant was to help us to understand the purpose. We called it just war theory. In other words, is there such a thing as a righteous war? And keeping in mind that war is not necessarily shooting people. War is also using economics, politics, or diplomacy and information to control people as well. But is there ever a moment that war is justified, even if it does mean shooting people? And the answer is a resounding yes. And good men and women throughout human history have said that, have agreed with that concept that there comes a moment when war is justified. As a matter of fact, it is generally the common state among the peoples of the planet that they are at war with each other. It's fact, folks. Look it up, do your research, study history. The normal way people deal with each other is through coercion, compulsion, and manipulation. That is normal human interaction. Now, by normal, I don't mean good. Good is not normal. Good is special. Good is above, far above normal. Okay. But normal, because we are all corrupt, normal is coercion, compulsion, and manipulation. I'm not pointing the finger at you. I'm saying this is what we find in our hearts, and it's what we have to guard against. It's what we have to. This is the literal enemy. Now, those of you who are Christians, I'm sure you've heard from Ephesians. It talks about, I believe it's Ephesians 5 or 6, might be 6. Anyway, in Ephesians, it talks about the fact that we are not at war with flesh and blood. We're at war with rulers and principalities, and with powers and principalities and rulers in high places. All right. Well, this is what we're talking about. It is the corruption. It is the lie. It is the corruption, and the lie, not just in others or just in our culture or just in our government, but in ourselves, that we have to fight against. That is the enemy. So when we see it in others, absolutely, we need to stand up against corruption. When we see it in ourselves, we need to stand up even more strongly against it. Okay? That's just the way it has to work. You can't win the war that we're making against corruption if you focus on someone else's and don't see your own. You've got to constantly be searching your own heart and soul. Now, the problem with that is that it makes us generally at the outset weaker and slower than our opponents. If they don't have any compunction about being corrupt, if they don't have any compunction about lying, if they don't have any compunction about trying to manipulate people or trying to compel them to do things, um, then we're at a disadvantage. But ultimately, if we are on the side of truth, if we are attempting to be righteous, then we are on the side of good. So, back to war, right? Why do we fight? Why do we make war? Well, first of all, we make war because we're corrupt. All right. That's why most people make war. So, what hope is there for us? Well, first of all, our Creator, who made us and endowed us with our natural rights, has a plan. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is what we do. How do we deal with the fact that we are at war constantly and that there are people to whom we have ceded vast amounts of authority and power and resources who are at war with us because they are just as corrupt as the rest of us? So, how do we make just war against them? Well, I'd like to posit some considerations. Again, keeping in mind that war can be any combination of diplomacy, information, military, and economics. Okay, so we'll talk about why we should and then how we should make war in that situation. Keeping in mind that it's the lies, the corruption, and the power that are the actual enemies, not the people. So basically, if you can take these corrupt people who have such great power and are not under any sort of supervision, and you can take that away from them, you can deny them the amount of power they have, you can impose supervision on them, you can hold them to a standard, then you are making war on that corruption. And you're actually doing them a favor because you're making war on the corruption that holds them in thrall. Now, of course, they won't see it that way. They'll see it as you being mean, or see it as you being rebellious, or see it as you being a bad citizen because you don't think that they have the right to own you like a cow. They don't. They don't have that right. And if you sit here and let them do it, whether they have the right or not, they will do it. Okay. So, how do we take that opportunity away from them? I want to be I want to work through this real quick, okay? There's a difference between authority and power. Right and authority and power, okay? The right means that under natural law, under the law that we all know deep in our hearts, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We are all equal under the law. We are all equal before the law. We are created equal in the rights that are endowed to us by our Creator, and no human being can change that about any other human being, including himself. You can't cede your own rights to someone else. They are yours, yours alone, and they are unalienable. Okay? Now, your rights are also certain, which means there is a list of them that never changes. And it's not just anything you can dream up. You don't have a right to, throw rocks at your neighbor's house. You don't have a right to do a lot of things, but you have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay? Those cannot be taken from you, and you can't give them up. All right. So, war is when someone attempts to compel you by use of force, coercion, or manipulation to do what they want you to do. And it happens all day long, every day, if you're paying attention. Okay. So, how do you return the favor? How do you make war and win against the real enemy? Well, basically, as I was saying, as far as it goes with government, you simply take the opportunity for them to do this to you away from them. All right. So they already do not have the right. They already do not have the authority. If you read the documents that founded our government, they don't have the authority to treat you the way that they treat you. What do they have? They have the power. Why do they have the power? Where did they get the power? Why hasn't something been done about it? Well, it's quite simple. All power is derived from the people. All power is derived from the people. We are the sovereign entities who cede our power over to other sovereign entities and allow them to exercise that power over us to our detriment. Why do we do that? Well, there are a number of reasons. First of all, in a lot of cases, because they give you presents. Think about it. Think about it. So, if somebody lives in your house and they regularly abuse you, they threaten you, they demand that you do things that you don't want to do, but they make nice with you, they buy you nice things, they take you out to dinner, they dress you well, is that okay? Does that really mean they have the right to mistreat you? Nope. Nope. It means they're using economics and information to control you, as well as diplomacy. All right. They're making war against you to destroy you. All right. So if someone physically abuses you, but they buy you pretty things, is that okay? No. However, a vast portion of the US population, and certainly here in West Virginia, submits to that abuse because of all the wonderful, pretty things that the government buys for them with their neighbors' money. And I want you to understand, I'm not just talking about people who get their groceries bought by the government, although I will tell you very clearly, whoever buys your groceries owns you, owns you. Buy your own groceries, own yourself. All right. But that's not really who I'm talking about. I'm talking about corporations. I'm talking about wealthy people who, um, set things up so that they can protect their wealth while acting like everyone else should just completely surrender to the government. And what they don't understand is they're actually surrendering themselves. When you play the game, what you do is you accept the rules. The rules are completely corrupt. The rules are wrong. They're destructive. And when you play along with the rules because for this moment it benefits you, what you are really doing is you are stating publicly, I am doing what they tell me because they have the right to tell me this. And then one day when they tell you to do something so destructive or so vile or so corrupt that you can't do it anymore, and you try to stand up and say, I will go no further, everyone just laughs at you because you have already surrendered. You have nothing left to stand. You have nowhere left to stand because you have surrendered everything you are and have to them. So one reason that people don't fight back against this is because the abusive government buys them things. Another reason is because they fear the government. Now, there are two ways to look at this fear. One is they literally fear the damage the government will do to them, which I understand. I spent 20 years in the infantry. It is hard to imagine what can be done to people using the equipment, the capabilities, the formations, the coordination, the communication. It would stun you. It would horrify you to know what your government is capable of doing to you. All right. You are wise to fear them. You are not wise to fear them so that you kowtow to them. And I use fear here in a different way, um, much like the Bible talks about fearing God. I'm not saying the government is a God. I'm saying a lot of people treat it like God, like they should treat God. They fear the government. They kowtow to it. They see it as the sovereign king that they should obey, and they see it as great and glorious and majestic. I can't tell you how many times I have I've been talking with someone about these principles, only to have them say, "Yes, but look what we have done as a nation." And the answer is no, we haven't done that as a nation. Those people over there did it. They got the government's permission and the government's input, and then they got the government to take a bunch of money out of your pocket and pay for it. You didn't do it. It was taken from you. That's not something that we all can glory in. Now there are things that we can, but that's not one of them. Okay, when the when we talk about the great and glorious things that our government has done, it's built this or it's whatever. Actually, individual citizens working together in teams for their own mutual benefit have always accomplished more greater and more noble things than any government ever could. Okay, so they fear the government. So the government buys them pretty things. They fear the government. The third is the most insidious of all, and it horrifies me because even though I've never cared for pretty things, never occurred to me that I needed a hot rod or just it. I'm not saying I'm better than anybody. I'm just saying it's not the way I'm built. Okay. There are things that do appeal to me that are corrupt because I am a human being and I'm corrupt. And the third, frankly, the most insidious, the most vile is the one that actually appeals to me. And I have to be on guard against it all day long. So the third is that you hope these people who refuse to fight against government corruption, who refuse to stand up for their own rights, their own liberties, their children's rights and liberties, who sell their children downstream. It's not because the government can buy them pretty things. It's not because the government has done great and wonderful things and they fear it. It's not because they're afraid the government is going to do horrible things to them. It's because they desperately, desperately hope they can be a part of it. It's because they want to be one of the acclaimed. They want to be one of the accepted, one of the nobles, one of the aristocracy. Do you see the horrible filth that is? Do you understand it? I do. I do. It is a part of my natural bent, and I'm confessing it to you now so that you can hold me accountable. Um, it horrifies and disgusts me. But the thing is, in my natural corrupt self, without the help of God, without the help of the Holy Spirit, without friends to keep an eye on me, my natural bent is to want to rule. Now, I realize that I'm running for governor, and here I am sitting here telling you that I have this terrible problem. I do. I do. But see, I acknowledge it. I recognize that I know the damage that it does to my soul, the damage that it does to those I care about. And, I fight it. I fight it. The problem is that most people in government give into their desire to be part of something bigger than they are, and to rise up the chain and to become somebody, have their little department that they're the king of. I see it all over the place. It's amazing. All right, so how do we fight this? You have to start by fighting the corruption inside yourself. Remember, the corruption is the enemy. All right? So, first thing is recognize what you are. Are you one of those people who kowtows because you like being told what to do, because you fear the great and wonderful government? Fear it as in respect it and look to it like a god. And those who represent it are like the priests and priestesses, bringing down the word of God from the holy mountain. Think about it. Be honest with yourself. And if that's the way you respond to the government speaking to you, you got to work on that. All right? That's not okay. They're just people. And most of them are not good people. And very few of them are actually very smart. And almost none of them share your agenda. Okay? They want something very different from what you want, no matter what they say leading up to election day. All right? If you find that you fear government as in you want to go and hide from it, I absolutely understand. It means you're paying attention. All right? But if that fear causes you to withdraw, to fail to engage, then they've already won. You've already surrendered. Look, I don't want to do this. I don't like politics. I don't want to be a part of this. This is not something I do because it gives me my jollies. It's disgusting. It wears me out. It takes the life out of me. You see all this gray? Yeah, it's not from my kids. That's from engaging in politics, because I sincerely care about what's right and good. And I often just wonder if we're ever going to see it again. It takes a lot out of me. But I would love to just run off into the woods and build my little spot in the middle of nowhere on the side of a lake, or maybe next to a river, and just forget that the government exists. It's not an option. They will never, ever, ever, ever leave you alone, or your kids, or your grandkids. So now's the time to make a difference. If you love the government, if you serve the government, if you put up with their abuses because they buy you nice things, please, please understand the destructive force that the government really is. They don't love you. They're not here to help. They are not your friends. The government is nothing but destruction, and it has but one purpose, and that is to secure your rights by preventing others from denying you the free exercise of your rights. That's the only purpose for government. All right. There's nothing beautiful or good or lovely or, worthy about it. It's just here to damage and destroy. Now, I'm an infantryman. There are certain things that need to be damaged and destroyed, but not wantonly, not tyrannically, focused, intentional, for a purpose, and that purpose is to secure the natural rights of each citizen. No other purpose. We have to take the tools out of their hands that allow them to abuse us as they do. And in so doing, not only will we save ourselves, but we will actually free the tyrants and the tormentors. Because then, when they can't do it anymore, they will they will be forced to live a normal life, and it's the best thing in the world for them. It's the best thing in the world for all of us. Take care of your kids, take care of your family, do a good job at work, stand up for what's right. Here's the thing, though. This is why we fight. Why we fight is because we know we have a vision. We have a true vision, and it is far more beautiful, far more compelling, and far clearer to us than anything else that's going on. And that vision is of a land where people live as they will. They pursue truth and happiness as they will. And the only time anyone is ever able to use compulsion or to try to control them, right? The only time is when those people go so far astray that they try to harm others. It's the only time. I don't get to decide how you pursue justice. Now, I have a pretty clear idea what I think justice is. I have a pretty clear idea what I think truth and righteousness are. I'm a pretty devout Christian. I've spent decades studying the Bible. But I will never, ever, ever attempt to compel you to behave like a Christian. Now, if we have a relationship that allows it, I will do everything I can to convince you, but never compel you, never manipulate you. All right? So the thing is, we have to defend each other's rights. We have to take away from the government the tools, the resources, the opportunities that allow it to enact that compulsion upon us when it is completely unacceptable. Again, compulsion for one reason, to prevent compulsion. I hope you understand that. All right. So we, the people, have to come together and enforce upon our government the law that formed that government, which is the Constitution. All right. So there are various methods that are open to us currently. And all of those methods make use of some combination of the elements of power to compel the government to stop illicitly compelling us. All right. And I'm not going to be able to list all of them. However, it begins with us denying them the authority that we have given them for so long, the illicit authority. And they don't even have the authority. It's specifically denied to them in their founding document, in their charter, the U.S. Constitution. But we pretend along with them, we accept their little fantasy that they have the right to tell us what to do. So, from my perspective, the first step is to actually play the game the way it's supposed to be played, to actually elect people who will serve the Constitution, who will serve as examples to the others, and who will hold the others accountable. I know a lot of people who think we're too far gone for that. I have two things to say about that. My analysis indicates that we are not, that we're on the precipice, but we haven't gone over it yet. I know we could argue about it for weeks, and you may at times convince me that I'm wrong, but I personally believe, based on the evidence that I've seen, that we can turn this thing around. I won't argue with anyone about that because there's too much evidence to the contrary. The other is, I believe that if we show up, if we do our job, if we hold our government accountable, if we hold ourselves accountable, if we absolutely root out the corruption inside ourselves, and then we stand up for what we know to be right, and then we're constantly open to learning that we don't always know what's right, but that there's more. There's more, and it's deeper and it's stronger than we can possibly imagine. If we will do these things, I, being a Christian, someone who's actually seen it happen 1,000 times, someone who has walked through things I can't even describe to you, I believe the Lord will fight for us. I believe it's His intent. I believe it's His intent to make us what we were supposed to be. All right. So, that doesn't mean that I sit on my hands and wait for God to come flying out of the clouds and magically fix everything. I believe that He gives us tools, capabilities, purpose, a vision, and sets us loose, and that we have free will. We have to choose. So it all starts with a choice. Let's make the right choice. All right, let me look here and see what we've got. Got a few comments. Thank you, Paul. God bless you. Um, I know, Rodney. I know it's we have been denied. We haven't been denied. I think it's been intentional that as students we were not taught what America really is. And I think I've covered this a few times, but America is not specifically a piece of land. It's not specifically a piece of or a bunch of people. It's those are incorporated into it, but America is an idea, and that idea is we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That vision is why we fight. That vision is worthy, it is honorable, it is righteous, and it is just, even when we are not. But that vision is worthy of all we have and all we are. Fear, lack of imagination, manipulation. Well, Rich, knowing your background the way that I do, I think you probably have firsthand knowledge of this stuff, and the rest of you will have to take my word for it that Rich and I have been through a lot of the similar things. So he has seen he's seen a lot of what I'm talking about. People don't have any backbone today, says Rodney. Too worried about hurting feelings. There's a right way and a wrong way to do things. You know, one of the things that I've noticed in my conversations with people, and a lot of people tell me I'm too direct, I'm too harsh, I'm too demanding, all this kind of stuff. And I'm sitting here going, well, all I did was ask you a question. You know, do you want the blue one or the green one? Well, and then they talk for 10 minutes and I say, no, no, no. Do you want the blue one or the green one? There's a blue one, there's a green one. You can have either. Just pick one. And what I have a theory about this, and it is that most people are unwilling to take responsibility for their own thoughts and feelings and intent and actions. Um, I'm not. I know I'm wrong a lot, but I so desire to own myself under God I so desire to be honorable and honest and true that I refuse I refuse to abdicate authority over myself. And authority and responsibility are two sides of the same coin. So when I was teaching young lieutenants, training young officers in the Army, I told them that being in charge means one thing and one thing only. It means it's all your fault. That's what being in charge means. That's being in charge of anything. Being in charge of yourself, being in charge of a business, being in charge of a unit in combat. It means that it's on you. You have to make sure it happens, um, and then it happens the right way. So I think that most people are so afraid of responsibility that they refuse to assume authority. And because they deny themselves authority over themselves, they lose their liberty. I don't know. I'll let y'all chew on that for a while. Rodney also says, I have been to Charleston on several occasions to express my concerns. Someone finds out that you're going, they'll ask about this, ask about that, because they don't realize there's power in numbers. One person cannot do it all. Well, that's a fact. I said earlier that all power is derived from the people. It originates with the people, but that's the people, plural, not any one person. So, there's an organization in this state that does an amazing job of expressing with power and wisdom and its intent to uphold the Second Amendment, and that is the West Virginia Citizens Defense League. And if you ever want to study an effective political grassroots organization, study WVCDL. I would like to hope that one day the founder can't, but the men who have led that organization, well, actually men and women, excuse me, but the people who've led that organization since its inception up till now, I'd love to think they would write a book. But I'm also kind of concerned that they would because, people who stand against us can also read our manuals and use our tactics. But the CDL has got the right. They've got the right formula. They know how to put it all together. All right. David says, glad to see me on it. Man, David, I tell you what, I am too. And I'd like to say a couple of things about that. And I don't mean any of them as an insult or anything other than that. But I got to tell you, in the year and a half that I personally was gathering signatures for this, and I would ask other people to help me repeatedly. Their response would be, well, I hope it works out for you. And frankly, the people who actually worked to gather signatures to get us on the ballot was a very small number of people who did this. And it was really kind of disheartening for me because I would have people say, oh man, I hope you win. I hope you get on the ballot. And I'd say, well, look, can you take this sheet and get 10 signatures for me? And they'd say, I can't do that. And I'm not pointing at you, David. I honestly have no idea whether you were able to help out or not. And I know people are busy and they've got other things they're worried about. And nobody wants to be an Amway salesman, turn all your friends and family into marks that you have to sell stuff to. I understand that. I mean, I'm in the same situation. I hate it. But it was the mechanism open to us to actually engage in this election, and we had to do it. So I'm grateful for all the people who wanted me on the ballot, who encouraged me, who are happy that we're on the ballot. And I'm concerned that most of those people will do what most of those people did before we got on the ballot. Now that we're on the ballot, and say, "Well, you got my vote. That's great. Can you bring 10 other people along?" Because I'm really honored. Your vote is sacred to me. Your signature on that form was sacred to me. But politics is about numbers. It always has been. It always will be. I need help. Please help me. And David, again, I'm not picking on you. By the way, have I ever told you that one of my best buddies in the Army was named David Sanders? He's a big, ugly brute, Texas A&M grad. And the two of us regularly would, he called it wrestling. We'd wrestle. And the troops loved it. See the two lieutenants out there beating the snot out of each other. But Dave actually dove off the top of a Bradley one time and tackled me from 9.5 feet in the air, and he weighed a good 240. So that was pretty special. That was sort of thing you don't forget. But short version is, thank you for the encouragement. Thank you for for recognizing how valuable this accomplishment is. But we can win this thing. We just need some help. And we need all the people who are saying, hey, man, you got my vote, to go out and find 10 other people and get them to say, hey, man, you got my vote. Ad infinitum until we actually win this thing. We have to build this momentum. And if I came across as ungrateful or crass, I regret that. But I think it's important to note what went right, what went wrong, and how we can do better. So, David, you can holler at me later and tell me I'm a jerk if you feel like I am. I wouldn't blame you. Roger says, if we should decide not to fight your problem, I assure you that me and my friends will remind you of it. If you should decide not to fight your problem. Thank you, Raj. Seriously, I mean that sincerely. Please keep an eye on me. You've been my brother for what, 5-6 years now, and I absolutely hope that you will get a hold of me and tell me I'm wrong when you think I'm wrong. I know that when you do it, you intend the best for me. So please do. Thank you, sir. And Raj with his endorsement there at the end. Thank you, sir. It's an honor. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for listening. And for those of you who are gonna watch later, thank you for doing that. And please help. We got a big task, but I tell you what, we can change things. We can make this a very different place forever going forward. A place where your kids and my kids can live free. And that's what we're called to do. That's our mission. Let's make it happen. Thank you very much. Oh, by the way to do that is, let me see here. Give me 2 seconds. Won't take but 2 seconds here. So I'm going to put a link up here. I ask you to click on the link. And when you do, you might have to download the app that allows you to talk with us. But that's where my team, our campaign team, gets together and talks about what we're doing and how to do it. And I'd be really grateful if you would go there, sign up, and just copy that link or click on it from your computer. Sign up and look, tell the team there, look, I live in this place. I live in this county. I live near this town. And I'm willing to wave signs at the polls, or I'm willing to make phone calls, or I'm willing to call the editor of my local newspaper, or whatever it is you're willing to do. Please do it. Please do it. And please step outside your comfort zone, because if we can really push for these 2 months, we can change everything in West Virginia. Thank you for your time. Y'all have a good night.